Okay. Stop video so we can stop looking at my neck. And we'll do share screen. What? Yeah. Well, you guys get the live view of my neck, so it's even better. Okay. So cool. So today we are going to be talking about Ajax. How many people have used Ajax before? Okay. All right. Yeah. How many people have used Ajax successfully before? Okay. All right. So let's go to Drive. And I'm really glad I'm logged in because otherwise I'd have to run and get my phone. And okay. All right. Ajax. What does it stand for? All right, I heard asynchronous JavaScript, and then that last part was deliberately mumbled. And XML. The first time I had heard of Ajax was many, many years ago when I was giving a training in Switzerland, and there they call it Ajax because of the pronunciation. It was German Switzerland, and so I always think of like Ajax when I think of Ajax. This is what you guys come here for. All right. Okay. So Ajax, actually, so for those of you who have used Ajax, or those of you who haven't, what is Ajax? What is it? Why do we use Ajax? What's the point? Okay. All right. I'm pretending Allie's not here.
It allows you to get information onto your website without refreshing the entire page.
Get information onto your website without refreshing the entire page. Where are you getting the information from?
Well, a web server.
A web server, yeah. And it's almost always your own web server. There are, I don't know if you guys have ever dealt with cross-origin things, but there are reasons that your website can't get things from another server, and it's mostly security reasons. So you have to deal with a lot of cross-origin rigmarole if you want to be able to do Ajax to a server other than the one that's actually serving the page that you're on. Okay, so Ajax is a way of getting data, and usually you update part of the page. It's not always. Sometimes all you're doing is you are just posting that there is a, there's an update to the server, and you don't need to reload part of the page or update part of the page. And yes, without reloading the entire page. Because you guys know how to make pages change without, you just click a form or you click a button and you reload the page and it looks different, right? But Ajax is, you are not actually reloading the page. So the browser's role, so this is browser JavaScript now, client-side JavaScript. The browser's role is to ask the server for the data, often in JSON format, but not always. That's the J of Ajax. I don't know that anybody uses XML that much anymore, but that they did when Ajax was first starting. And then receive the data and change the DOM accordingly. So that's what the browser does. The browser sends off a message to the server saying, I need some data. Then it receives the data and updates the DOM.
You can still call it Ajax even though it's JSON.
Yeah, there's JavaScript, you're right. JSON is, what does JSON stand for? Yeah, so that's the sort of the J part. Okay, and then the server's role is to first serve the original page. That should be serve and not server. Serve the original page for the route. And then it also is going to serve Ajax data, and that's going to be for a different route. So when I ask for the page, that's going to be a certain route. And when I ask for the Ajax data, that's going to be an entirely different route. And that second route's sole purpose is going to be to serve Ajax. That second route is never going to serve HTML on an actual page. Say that one more time,
So
Michi.
would you just embed that? Would you just write that with the same set of routes?
With the same set of routes, yeah. But it's going to be a different route.
Right. But
Yeah.
You still call it the same way. It's not gonna have to
Exactly.
on
You
that
still
route
call
because
it the
that's
same
where you
way.
want to serve it.
Okay, so here is the best diagram I could find with that glorious stick figure up on the upper left. Okay, so here's the user who has very little between his shoulders and his head, or her, or there. So the user is going to type the URL. The browser is going to request that page, and then the server is going to send HTML back from that request. And the user is going to be able to see that data from the first request. Then the browser is going to ask for the content. And how is it going to ask for the content? What's the mechanism that's going to ask for the content? Yeah, it'll either use a get or a post. I think I'm asking this question in not a very clear way. It's going to use JavaScript. It's going to use client-side JavaScript to ask for the rest of the content. And then this is sort of like the Ajax engine, which we're going to use fetch, is going to make an Ajax request. The server's going to respond. Then we are going to update the DOM with whatever the result was. And then we'll display the rest of the data to the user. All right, questions on this? I find visuals pretty helpful, which is why I include them in the lecture. If you don't, then whatever, ignore it.
Okay, this may seem silly, but I haven't got there yet. What is the DOM?
Ah, the DOM. What does the DOM stand for? This is just a class in acronyms, basically. What does DOM stand for? Document Object Model. The DOM is, well, somebody describe it. Somebody else describe. What's the DOM? You're not alone, Brittany.
All of us are like, so it's the thing with the. It's like how scripts interact with like the actual web pages.
Yeah, and the DOM itself. So I think what you said how scripts interact with the web pages, and that I would call manipulating the DOM. The DOM itself. It is the current state of the HTML of the web page. And you can update the DOM. You can change what the HTML of the web page is. But it's the current state of the HTML of the web page, which might be different than what was served.
So then when you do this, you type the URL.
Yeah.
And you ask for the rest of the content. You Ajax, get your response, and then when it finds the result to the existing DOM, that means it updates the HTML.
It updates the HTML, so what you see is different as a result. Yeah, thanks for asking that, Brittany. Yeah, Kelsey.
Does the DOM, it's sort of, you can describe the DOM as like the tree that is the HTML code that like has the title and the body.
Yeah, so as Kelsey is pointing out, the DOM is often described as a tree. And the tree would be, well, I'm just going to, sorry for those of you watching at home, I am only going to draw this tree on the whiteboard. So the tree can look like this, where you have HTML, and then you have the head, and the body, and in head you have the title, and you have link, right? In the body you have div, and that has an H1 and a paragraph, right? And so yeah, so manipulating the DOM is you can say, okay, I'm going to add a new div to the body. Or you can say, I am going to change the contents of this div. Or I'm going to change the text of this paragraph. Or I'm going to change the class of this H1. So instead of displaying as black, it's going to display as red. I did a couple weeks ago a DOM manipulation lecture, or I think it was even just in office hours. I can do another one if people are interested. Okay. A learner brought this to my attention that this has an example of Ajax versus reload, which I think is instructive. Why, hello, Jonathan M. Okay, so down here, so here we have an Ajax example, and I can say 3 times 4, and I click Ajax, it goes to a server, gets the answer, and then updates this as 12. Of course, you could have done that in client-side JavaScript. You could have just multiplied them, but in for this example, they went to a server, got the answer, and then updated this element in the DOM. This standard example is not using Ajax. So what is it actually going to do? It's going to reload the page. So watch. It reloaded the entire page. And when it did, it gave me my answer. Notice it totally obliterated this here. If I do this, is it going to obliterate this? No, because all it's doing is updating this small part of the DOM. But you notice the ads are different. We have the winking sun and the 2 scoops of raisins, which is different than what we had before. It totally reloaded the page when I did this here. All right, so any lingering questions on difference between Ajax and reloading the page?
The results are faster just because you have to reload. Otherwise, the wait time.
Yes, the results are faster because you're not actually reloading and re-rendering the page. You're just changing a tiny part of the DOM. Okay, so, all right, so now let's start to look at some of the syntax. So, to be honest, I've always used jQuery for Ajax, but I know that Learners Guild in general it wants you to know how to do things without jQuery. So here's one that you can use. It is XML HTTP request. And it is about as friendly as that name suggests, right? It is not easy to use, but it is low level and is very powerful. It's like a lot of things in programming. If you want a lot of control and you want a lot of power over what happens, then you're going to have a more complicated API. All right, so here are some examples. So you make a new OREC, you actually are adding an event listener, you're doing an open, you're doing a send, and you can, override the MIME type, you're dealing with just really low level stuff here. You can add event listeners on particular parts of the XML HTTP request. Yeah, I'm not going to demonstrate it because frankly, it's lower level than I enjoy. If I needed to do something specific that I could only do with XML HTTP requests, then maybe I would investigate it. But for today, that's not what I'm going to do. Instead, what I want to do is I want to use fetch. So for fetch, you give it your route. And what does the dot then indicate that this fetch function returns? A promise. The fetch function returns a promise. And then we can do a dot then, and we can interpret that response as text or as JSON. Then you can just, here I'm just console logging. Yeah, whereas ordinarily here you would probably make a DOM adjustment. And then you can do the dot catch on the error. Okay, and fetch has official documentation, of course. Uh-huh.
Because like the whole XML.
Oh yeah.
Like thing looked like way involved.
Yeah, you and me both, lady.
And,
Yeah.
and like everything in the modules and stuff said, oh well, here's fetch. But every time I tried to use fetch, like it just said that like fetch wasn't defined. But like all the official documentation, all of the tutorials and stuff, it's just like, oh, literally just say fetch and this, and I don't.
Were you doing it on your browser side JavaScript or your server side JavaScript?
I honestly don't remember where I was doing it.
I can imagine that you would get that on your server side JavaScript. A fetch isn't defined. On your browser side JavaScript, fetch is implemented in all modern browsers. So, anyway, we can talk about it, but that's my guess as to what was going on.
I was just not sure if I was like missing a step to move it somewhere, or if it's just,
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, on modern browsers include this. Say that one more time, Mishi. No, this is the Ajax request, and it's running on the client side. Yeah. Yeah, back to our image. It's this one right here, or actually this one right here. You can do it on your server. Yeah, you can do it on your server, but that's usually if your server is trying to get stuff from another server, say from a third-party API or something like that. It is, but again, this is not running in Node. This is running on your client. Yeah, and so in some ways, when we taught at Hackbright, when we taught server side was all Python and client side was all JavaScript. In some ways that was more confusing because you had to learn two languages, but in other ways it was less confusing because if you were using JavaScript, you were on the client side, right? There was no question even about whether you were on the client or the server. You can't use Python on the client side. And so, yeah, so imagine this is JavaScript even if your backend is Python. All right, so examples. So I made some scaffolding because I didn't want to sit here and write a bunch of websites while you were here. So I made some scaffolding for a couple of examples. The first one is simple. The second one is more complicated. So let's start with the first one. And the first, and by the way, if you want to play around with these, and I always recommend that you play around with the demo code that I do in lecture because that will help you understand it, make some changes, see what happens. So the first one is a magic 8-ball. You're going to enter a question, click a button, and you're going to get a magic 8-ball response via Ajax. All right, so let's work on that one first. So I am going to that's not what I want to do. I want to do my clone using the SSH way so that I'm not pestered for a username and password. Before I was doing the clone with the HTTP way, which I would have run into username and password issues. Okay, so all right, so let's look at the README. Always a good thing to do. Okay, fork or clone refo, npm install. And then I'm going to do an npm dev start. Why do you think I'm doing npm dev start instead of npm start? Try Kelsey. I think I know where you were going.
Make sure it uses the right Ajax or whatever data.
The whatever data. That's usually why we do things like in test. We use a different database and stuff. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's actually look and see what that looks like. So start, I just have node app.js. And dev start, I have export node-env equals dev and nodemon app.js. And notice that nodemon is just in my dev dependencies. Why would nodemon just be for dev?
You definitely don't want your server restarting anytime you're making a change.
You don't want your production server restarting anytime you're making a change, right? So I wanted to use nodemon, but it felt irresponsible to me to put nodemon in my npm start, because npm start should just be for production. I don't think I ever use this environment variable in this particular app. There's not a lot going on here. It's just like the magic 8-ball. But for me, this is a good habit to get into. Not unless it has a space in it. Okay. So let's do an npm dev start. By the way, I mean, you guys all know how I feel about Python and JavaScript in general, but this is something that Python doesn't have, or at least something I don't know about. I might have to look into it, but Python doesn't really have this concept of scripts that are associated with the project, which I find like very, very useful. So let's do an npm, let's see. Oh, but it has to be an npm. What did I do wrong here?
You have to know npm run.
Yeah. I can only do npm without the run in what cases?
Start and test.
Start and test. There are other ones too, but they have to be built in. Yeah. So listening on port 3000. Okay, so let's look at port 3000. Okay, so we're going to type our yes, no question here, and then we're going to submit. Magic 8-ball. Fine. My internet connection is unstable. Okay, sorry. I hope that's not a problem for Jonathan. And I also want to just make sure that he's not like doing any chat things. I'm not sure exactly how to do that. Sorry, Jonathan. But you can always unmute your mic and just talk if you have a question. Okay, so let's go here now, and let's just look at the app.js. All right, so I just took all of the magic 8-ball predictions. And then I made a function called getRandomAnswer that just gets a random prediction. Fine. So that's just like some scaffolding. And now here I just have this res.send, and I have this very simple string of HTML that it's sending. All right, questions about the setup here? Okay. So what do I need in order to make this Ajax? So from the beginning of the lecture, what do I need to do in order to make it so that when I click on this submit button, I get the random answer loaded into here? Okay, so I'm gonna need to make an event listener on the button. Absolutely. So let's write this down. Okay, I'm gonna have to make an event listener on the button. Is this going to be client side or server side? Okay, what else? I heard you say fetch. Is that going to be client or server side? Okay, what else?
You have to do, so server side, you're going to do post, right? Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a post.
Well, you're sending information.
I
You're not
am.
really reading it.
True. Also, the information, if it wasn't a post, it could go through the just the query string in the URL. I think the query string can only be 256 characters. So if I had a really long, involved question for the Magic 8 Ball, that might be a problem. But
Or is that just going to be answered?
I do have a form,
You have a form built in.
but I'm never going to submit the form. If I submit the form, that is going to reload the page.
Oh, that's right.
So I do not want to submit the form.
Unless you do that. Don't do default.
I'm going to definitely do a prevent default, yes. Okay, what do I need to do on the server? Nothing? Say that again? For the what? Well, so let's, I don't want to reload. Let's look and see. Let's look back at the at this. What does the server need to have? It's going to have a route. A route to serve answers. Okay. You guys with me? Do you have a question, Allie? No? Okay, what do you guys want to do first? Let's do the route to serve answers. Okay. So here, I'm going to make a new route. And yeah, it's a question. Do I want to do an app.get or an app.post? I'm going to be a little lazy here because I don't want to deal with a body at this point. So I'm just going to do an app.get. And I'm going to call it Magic 8 response. Fine, whatever. You can call it whatever you want. Okay, is that how you do things here? Apparently so. Okay. And now I am just going to do a res.send. I can say and then now that this is done, I can actually go to my server and I can say localhost 3000 / magic 8 ball. That's a problem. Magic 8 response. And all it's doing it, why hello, whoever you are. All it's doing is serving this. If I look at the page source, it threw all of this around the response, but that response is just a string. That's all it is. Okay, so now I am going to, so now let's work on the fetch part. And for that, I am going to have to include a script in my HTML, and I can just do it here if I want. That's a little bit, let's do a script source equals, and I'm going to just say magic8.js. And now I need to use a static directory. So hold on just a sec. Let me make a new folder. I'm going to call it public. And then I am going to, inside that, I'm going to make a new file called magic8.js. And then I am going to, oh, by the way, so I want to practice good Git hygiene. So I got something working, right? What did I get working? Yeah, so I'm going to say add route to serve magic 8-ball response. Okay. So now in public, I have this magic 8. All right, so now in the app, I'm going to have to, for those of you who haven't done this yet, in order to include this script in my HTML, I need to serve it from a static folder. And I don't remember how to do that, but Google does. So node express use static folder. Cool. Mishi has it memorized. I do not, and I don't even want to type it. Okay. So does this look right? Okay. So we'll do that up here. And
Explain that again. Why is it?
So do you remember in the HTTP anatomy lecture where when this is the response, it's going to look and see if there's any other resources that it needs to get. And then it's going to go grab those. And this is going to be one of those other resources that it needs to get. And it needs to know where to look for that. And so client-side JavaScript, CSS, and images are the standard things that you put in a static folder. Those are things that are served without getting interpreted. You know, they're just like that whole section or that whole file is just, you know, without any interpretation, just like tossed to the browser. And so there's generally just conventionally a place where you put all that stuff, and you have to tell the Express server where to look for it.
Why doesn't it just look in the link provided?
Because this link, according to the browser, is I am asking, I want the file magic8.js at the top level of your server. That's what that means. Or actually, no, I think it's in the same directory. It would be at the top level if I did this, but this is in the same directory as the current file. And that's not where it is. And that wouldn't be good organization to put it there. I might have to do this. Okay, so, okay, and now in magic8.js, I'm just going to console log I am here, just to see whether or not it's running. So, what's that? It is a URL. Yeah, in here. Yeah, it is a URL. This one is. Yeah. Thanks for the validation, Mishi. All right, so go back here and, oh, that's not the one that we want. We want this one. And let's look here. Uh-oh, failed to load resource.
I think it is the file.
Let's try again. Okay, yeah, it doesn't like that.
Right? So it's because you have magic 8 response,
This one is actually magic8.js. The idea of me putting the public here is so, yeah, exactly. The public here means I don't have to actually put it on there. Let's see, so if I do this, hold on, did I change it back to, thanks for sticking with me here. My lack of Express experience is showing. So let's, if I do this now. Okay, so hold on just a minute. Let me, thanks for sticking with me on this serving static files thing. I'm going to use this instead. This is how I've seen it more commonly, but now the path I need to require. So let's go back. You always get some good debugging in my lectures. Darn it. Okay. Oh, I think I have to put /static. Ah, okay. I am here. I am here. So basically what I'm saying up here is if you see anything with /static in front of it, look for it in this directory. And I wasn't putting the /static in front of it, so my bad. What do you mean? What? So why would telling Node where to look for it defeat the purpose?
Well, it doesn't defeat it, but it's.
Oh, yeah. In general, Express will only Express won't serve static files. It's kind of a security problem unless you explicitly designate a directory for which you want to serve static files.
That's
What's that?
weird.
What's that?
From saying app.use
Oh, I think I've seen app.static before. Is that perhaps what?
Hold on.
Oh, well, it didn't like that. App.static is not a function. All right, let's explore this later, although it is fascinating. And if you decide to explore while I'm talking, then you. Oh, so you don't actually have the static there. So if we remove the static, then I think we can probably remove this.
Yeah.
Aren't you just so close?
Bonnie, the screen share isn't working.
Oh, what happened to the screen share? Thank you. That's a bummer. that somebody missed all of that flustering around. Thank you. I would like to talk about, oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Oh no, you've been since 11:32. I think it might be that unstable internet thing. But thanks, Jonathan. Sorry about your voice and my totally ignoring your chats. Okay, so let's right. So and then what you're saying is you don't even need to do this. You can just like this, like so, Samaya. All right, so this is the Samaya approved way. All right, so let's go back here and refresh. I am here. Awesome. What do we want to do now? Commit. That's what we want to do now. Okay. So, okay, so create, what did we do? Create JavaScript file to client side. JavaScript file to write Ajax call. Okay, so now let's, okay, so fine. So now let's actually do stuff in that client side JavaScript rather than just console logging I am here. Let's actually make a function that makes that fetch call. So I'm going to say const run or get 8 response, and I'm going to make that a function that is going to run the fetch call. So it's going to run fetch, and it's just going to go to magic 8 response. And then I'm just going to do a dot then, and I'm going to console log, let's see. Okay, and the reason that I'm doing this, I like to do things just in like small stages and make sure they work before moving on. So let's see whether this works. How you doing over here? Okay. Let's refresh this. We're no longer getting I am here, but I now have a magic 8 response. I should. Let's see. Magic 8 response is not, oh, get 8 response. Okay, it didn't console log anything. It's a bit of a problem. But it actually did something. So let's, why didn't it console log? What am I doing wrong? Let's do a dot catch just to make sure if there's an error. Okay, no error. And this response, oh, I think I just said response, but, and it did, it console logged the response, and here it is, right? And if I really want the response.text, let's see, I don't want the status, I don't want the status text, I just want the, what's the body? The body is a readable stream. This is where I have to do the result.text. Okay, so let's try this now. I believe it is for fetch.
try to retract.
Thank you. The question was, what's a readable stream? And then I displayed hesitation. Okay, all right, good. So now we're getting our response. Awesome. So now let's actually put the response somewhere on the page. So again, we're just like building this really slowly, right? So let's put the response somewhere on the page. Instead of console logging it, let's do document.get, is it get by ID? Get element by ID? And I'm gonna say response. And now I need to actually put that on the page. Oh, I called it answer. Okay, so get dot text. Is that right? Can I do that? I use jQuery. Or do I say inner HTML? Okay. All right. What's that? Oh, okay. Got it. Just jQuery. Story of my life. Okay, so all right. So now if we do this, oh, document. It's not a function. And is it because, okay, so if we do that, it's there. Oh, dot text content equals. Like this, and then equals. Like that? Oh. Ah, okay. So, great. Thanks, Samaya. So now we want to do not hi, but text. Okay, you guys with me on this? Okay, and go screw yourself, yes, Lind. All right, so now when I run this, what should happen? It's gonna go to the server, it's gonna grab my response, and then it is going to take the text content of the response and put it in that answer. No page reloading. But I need to reload the page in order to get it to have the new JavaScript. Aha, nice, right? Okay, so now I am going to, now I need to do the event listener, like Brittany said. So I'm gonna have to do document.get element, or actually, you know what? I think now might be a good time to commit. So implement function that grabs data via Ajax and loads into the answer div. All right, I think our internet connection is just terrible right now, so I'll just let that sit for a minute. Okay, so, right, so now I want to do document.get element by ID and whatever that form is. So let's look at what my form is. Oh, I didn't give my form an ID. Okay, so my question form. And now I want to add event listener. Is that what people who don't use JavaScript do or jQuery do? And then I want to do a submit. So on that form, submit. And I want to take that event and create a callback. And so now the first thing I want to do is I want to prevent default. I do not actually want to submit that form. I'm using this submit because that submit, well, actually, I don't think it'll work because I have a text area, but in general, submit happens when you hit return in a text box or click submit. And then I want to do get 8 response, like that. Questions on that? No? The advantage of having a submit event on the form rather than a click event on the button is that right now my form actually is a text area. So if I hit return, it's not going to submit the form. But if it was just a text input, hitting return would actually submit the form. So it would do it both on hitting return in the text element and on clicking the button. Okay, so what do we want to ask the Magic 8 Ball?
Would you ever put event listener on the button? That's not a thing.
Yeah, you can only submit a form, but not a button. Buttons can be clicked, but only forms can be submitted. But really, we just want to ask the Magic 8 Ball. Nothing happened. Magic 8 Ball, you have failed me. So let's do some debugging. Okay, and okay, so let's just see where we're failing. Oh, did I not? I didn't refresh the page. That was the problem. That is a common problem when you're dealing with JavaScript stuff. If you make a change to the JavaScript, you have to refresh the page to load the new JavaScript. So everything was fine. Yeah. Okay, so the answer to your question was cannot predict now about. Okay, and so will this lecture ever end? Better not tell you now. Okay, so can somebody explain to me what happens when I click this submit button? Oh, sorry, I'll look not so good. What happens when I click the submit button? There's an event. We are listening for that event. Okay, so when that event happens, we call a function. What does that function actually do? It makes a fetch call to the route. It makes a fetch call to this Magic 8 response route. What does Magic 8 response route do? Louder, please.
Well, I wasn't done.
Okay.
All it does is like
So it's gotta have like its own route that just brings up the answer, right?
Right. And so that's the Magic 8 response route. And so, yeah, so all Magic 8 response route does is
is bring up the answer. Right?
Well, it gets a random answer and then it just sends it back as raw text. That's all it's doing. And so now,
sorry, I thought I answered the
oh,
question.
no worries. Back on the client side, we grab that text and then we add it to the DOM, particularly in this element with the ID answer.
So, route that it's calling,
The route that it's calling.
it has a normal red.send, which normally would actually get everybody facilitate.
Right.
I'm assuming the reason that it doesn't is called by our JavaScript as opposed to like the browser itself.
Exactly. The reason that when we call this, it doesn't refresh the page is because we are not typing that into the URL of the browser. We are getting it via fetch, and fetch does not refresh the page. Yeah. Good question. Other questions? I challenge you, so we didn't get to my second part, but my second part, so I just want to set up my second part, and for people who are interested in seeing whether they understood what was going on in this lecture, I, of course, have a pets site. Let's look at README. I'm going to do an npm install. And so while that's installing, I do have here, so for the Magic 8 Ball, we enter a question, click a button, and get a Magic 8 Ball response via Ajax. For pets, I want you to change the pet's name, and then I want you to record it in the database via Ajax, and then I want you to display a success or failure message on the page based on what happened. So let's go back here. So I did the npm install. So now let's do an npm db create. I'm going to have to update that. The README, it should be npm run db create. Oh, and the pets already exists, but that's fine. I'll run the db seed. And then I'll run the, what was the last one? Dev start. Oh, it's upset because I already have something running on port 3000. So I'm just going to end this one here. Try this again. Okay, so now on port 3000, we no longer have a Magic 8 Ball. We have these pets. And so the idea is whenever you change the name of a pet, instead of, it's going to be Toro for the dog. And then if you hit return, I want it to send that to the browser, or send that to the server, update it in the database, and then come back and send some sort of status message that you can display. And you could have like a save changes button or something if you wanted to do that instead. Anyway, so this is a nice exercise for you. And yeah, I'll send you a link to the slides, so that'll tell you where to get it, and then you can work on it and ask me if you have questions. I didn't get a lot of response for my COG app suggestion. If people are interested in it, please respond. If there are fewer than like 3 people interested, then I'm just not going to do it. So check the phase 2 channel for that. Oh yeah, great. So so in the old days of the guild, they had these things called cognitive apprenticeships, where basically you just watch me code, right? And I'll give you a little bit of commentary, but not a lot of like teaching. And then you just write down questions that you have, and then at the end you can see, then I'll answer questions. And the idea is to see what it looks like when somebody who sort of knows what they're doing is just like going at it. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So yeah, so I will, I'll submit the recording and the slides, and you guys can let me know. I can also, depending on what people want, I can work on this second example during office hours tomorrow.